So neurons actually create currents. They allow for the flow of current. And in order to understand what I'm talking about here, right, you got to know what a current is. What's a current? Well, a current is the flow of some sort of charged particle. So if we're talking about electric current you find in your copper wires in the walls, literally it's the movement of electrons along those copper wires. They basically, electrons flow when there's current or electricity flowing. Biological systems like our brains actually utilize a different ion to carry current, from one end of a neuron, say, to the other. And the ion that is used in our biological wires that travels along our axons from one end of the neuron to the next, or to the end, is actually the sodium ion. This is actually something you consume, of course, right, in the form of salt, which contains, both sodium and chloride. When it gets into that, charged, watery internal environment of your body and brain, it will actually separate into its constituent ions, sodium Na plus and chloride Cl minus. So the sodium, note, has a positive charge, while the chloride has a negative charge. The other thing you're going to need for current is a reason why something charged wants to go from one location to another, right? Why does it move? There's got to be some force or forces that are driving it. And one important force actually is what we refer to as the electrical force. And I'll mention this again in a moment. But the electrical force is literally, we know it as, opposite charges attract, right? And then like charges repel each other, right? So what you require for, in order to have a current flow is what we refer to as a separation of charge. Something has to separate charged particles, positive ones over here, negative ones over there, so that when you open some kind of a channel or hole, right, to let charges move, they will move towards the opposite charge. So you need that separation of charge. And think about this. What's a great charge separator? That phospholipid bilayer that forms the membrane of all your cells and all your cellular organelles, right, is actually impermeable to the passage of charged particles. So it's a terrific charge separator. If you get a whole bunch of sodium on one side, if there are no holes in that membrane to let sodium go through, that sodium is going to stay on that other side. It can't get across because the membrane itself is impermeable, right? I just want to mention briefly two other ions that play a pretty important role in sending electrical messages in neurons, and these are also pretty important constituents of your diet. One is potassium, and potassium, of course, you eat a banana in the morning, you get a lot of potassium. Potassium is designated by the symbol K. And it's K plus because it, like sodium, is a positively charged ion. And then I have here proteins. Well, it turns out that proteins are, of course, composed of those amino acids, and a majority of those amino acids are actually negatively charged. So proteins on the whole tend to have a slight negative charge to them, and we refer to these, to negatively charged things, as anions. So anions are negatively charged molecules, or ions, and in this case proteins are the A minus that's designated here. And think about where you find proteins. Proteins are, of course, manufactured inside your cells, so you're going to see most of the proteins on the inside of the cell, right? So you're going to have a slight negative charge kind of given to the inside of the cell versus the outside because of the presence of all those negatively charged proteins or anions.